Well, here's a bit of a surprise. In a year dominated by crossover and MPV launches, MG decides to buck that trend by introducing a new sedan. Surprised? Well, so were we. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the MG GT. So before we kick things off, let's start off with a little fun fact. So the GT is actually called the MG5 over in its home market in China. Now, of course, the reason why it's not called the MG5 here is because we already have it. But enough of that, let's check out the interior. So right now we are in the entry-level version of the MG GT known as the Alpha. What does it have to offer in here? Well, you got stacks of screens. You have a multi-information here right in front of me, and you have a digital instrument cluster alongside the screens. Plus, you have this floating infotainment screen right in the middle. And also, speaking of the infotainment system, it has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, a must in every vehicle these days. As for the design, you're going to see rather interesting marks down here, sort of like a diamond pattern. And if you need more USB ports, there are two right here at front, and there's one right here behind me. The Alpha model does have a different gear selector compared to the Sport, the Turbo model. So the Alpha has a conventional Prindle layout, whereas in the Sport model, you have an electronic shifter. As for the steering wheel, well, what can you expect from it? You got your volume controls, and you also have your buttons to control the interactive multi-info display. And you even get cruise control in this entry-level model. How interesting is that? Another thing to take note of are the seats. They are actually really comfortable. Other than that, the interior is mostly the same. You even get a sunroof in this entry-level model. That's really interesting, actually. So we've covered the front seats already. What about here at the back? Well, you have one air conditioning vent, singular, and the aforementioned USB port. And right below that, you also have a nice little cubby hole down here. Legroom, okay, I'll give an initial impression. It's pretty good, but this is in my position, so we'll know what it's like when there's someone taller right in front. Storage spaces. Got one here behind each of the seats, another pocket up here, and a decent sized bottle holder right down below. Other than that, there's really not much to see here other than these seats. They're just as soft and as comfortable as the ones in front. So that's pretty much a good thing when it comes to going on long distance road trips. So let's talk exterior, and let's start off with the Alpha model. So of course, standing out is this huge grille, wide, and covers practically the width of the whole front. And MG has a pretty long name for this grille, and we're just gonna put the name down here because I've pretty much forgotten what it's called. Now lower down, you're gonna have this carbon effect chin down here, and right up here, you're gonna look at these swept headlights. And for a base model, it already comes with LED lighting. Interesting. Now, moving further back, you get 16-inch alloys with a two-tone finish, and a little further back, you also have turn signals on your side mirrors. So that's the Alpha. So what's the difference between this and the Sport? At first glance, it's largely identical to the Alpha. You have these swept up headlights with LEDs, you have the wide grille with a long name, and you also have the carbon effect chin. But if you move a little further back here, you're gonna notice the larger 17-inch alloys with a slightly different pattern. And also, if you're gonna take a look under the side mirror, you also have a camera, and it's the same for the other side. That's because the Turbo model has extra cameras fitted to it. And of course, the sunroof is still standard in this particular model. As for other features, well, the Turbo has forward collision warning and lane keeping assist, to name a few. That's what you don't get in the Alpha. That said, you still get essential safety features such as anti-lock brakes and, more importantly, stability control. Now let's talk engine choices, and let's start with the Alpha with its 1.5-liter non-turbo engine with 114 horsepower and 150 Newton meters of torque. The transmission choice is an ICVT, or an intelligent continuously variable transmission. If you want a little bit more meat and more power, let's jump over to the Sport model. Now the Sport, yes, it has a 1.5-liter engine, but there is a turbocharger bumping up the power output to 161 horsepower and 250 Newton meters of torque. And even the transmission is different than the Sport model. It uses a dual clutch transmission instead of a CVT. Alright, so let's go for some quick impressions here as we take the MG GT on the road. Now, I'm now in the Sport model, so this is the boosted version, although granted we're not going to be able to truly exploit this engine since one, we're in a city, and two, traffic isn't really that great at the moment. But anyway, how does it feel like? Well, first of all, the ride. And considering the tires are slightly overinflated and we're driving over Manila's rather uneven roads, it's actually not bad. And I imagine if we lower the tire pressures a little bit, it's gonna be surprisingly comfortable. Now, I drove the non-turbo model with the smaller wheels, and it's even more comfortable compared to this one. As for performance, again, we're driving around the city, so it's not really the best gauge just yet. But what I can tell you is this, and that's the response of this engine. Now, it's quick enough for the most part, and if you put it in sport mode, it just gets off the line a little bit quicker. Okay, that's kind of expected for turbo engines, but what about the more pedestrian version? Well, having tried that one out too, it's not bad at all. It's responsive for a CVT. It's not going to be quick, but then again, you buy a sedan, you buy a family sedan, not necessarily for its acceleration prowess, but really for its smoothness and comfort. But if I had to choose between the turbo and the non-turbo model, honestly, I'm satisfied with the non-turbo variant, but this one, well, the extra power definitely helps. So what's happened here is the MG5 formula all over again. You get a C-segment sized sedan and price it like a B-segment sedan instead. But the difference is it's wrapped in a more sexy body and a more interesting interior. As for sales success, well, we'll see how it goes, but here's the thing about MG. They've always been known for making sleeper hits over the years, such as the ZS and the MG5. And given our first impressions, it looks like MG's gonna do it all over again.